Hi everyone, Crista Cowan here with another episode of The Barefoot Genealogist. Today we are talking about index-only records. So these are records that you find online at Ancestry.com where there is no associated image or where the associated image is also only an index. So we're going to talk about a little bit about why these records exist. We're going to talk about how to identify whether what you're looking at is an index or an original record. And then we'll talk about what to do next so that you can make sure that you are tracing the right family tree and not somebody else's. So let's go ahead and dive in. First, let's just talk a little bit about why these index-only records exist. There are a lot of different government and private agencies that hold the records that we need or want to use for family history research. And sometimes those are state archives or libraries. Sometimes those are county courthouses, genealogical societies. Maybe it is a state vital records office. Or, and sometimes, like in the case of England, it's a national vital records office, the General Register's Office. Just depends. So all of these different entities have the records that we want to use for family history research. And every one of those entities is governed by local laws. And laws are different in every state in the country. And here in the U.S., they're different in different countries. And so Ancestry has to work within those laws in order to access those records. Now, once we approach an organization to access those records, that organization then has the decision to make about whether they're going to provide us with copies of the original records. And sometimes those copies come in the form of microfilm. Those records have been filmed, and so they can give us a copy of that microfilm. We can digitize that microfilm, put those records online. Sometimes they allow us to set up in their archive and digitize from the original records themselves. Sometimes the only thing the archive or organization will give us is an index to the records. And sometimes that's an index that they've prepared themselves, and sometimes they allow us to digitize just enough that we can prepare an index on our side. So different ways we access those records, different rules and laws that govern the access, different permissions required or given, and then different ways those records are indexed once they make it online to our site. So that is kind of how that works. And like I said, every organization governed by different laws and makes up their own mind or has their own decisions about how to give us access to those records. Now, for some organizations, and I'm going to pick on England a little bit today, just because it's the most notorious for this. Some organizations, their laws allow them to give us a lot of records. So, for example, here in the United States, we have several states where if you want to access a birth record, there is a 100-year privacy law on that birth record. And only the person or an immediate family member may get a copy of that record, and you have to go directly to the State Vital Record Agency, prove that you are that person or a relative in order to get a copy of that record. Well, in England, it's a little bit different. Their laws allow you to access a birth record for anybody that you want at any time you want. However, for them, the actual register entries, or what we would consider certificates, are a revenue generating source for them. So every time somebody needs or wants a copy of a certificate or a register entry, they pay, I think it's up to like £10 to the General Register's Office to get a copy of that record. And so the only thing that the General Register's Office of England will allow Ancestry to put online is the index to those records. Okay, so full access, the law allows them to give it full access, but they have decided to only allow the index to be placed online. Like I said, every organization is different. That's just an example of one. We'll look at several more as we go throughout the rest of the presentation here. So let's talk about how you can tell if what you're looking at is a record or an index to the record. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about whether or not you need the original record, okay, and then how you get that original record. So, how you tell if you're looking at a record or an index to the record. The first thing you're going to want to do is look at the database title. That's going to tell you very clearly what it is that you're looking at. So if I come over here, I'm going to go to the card catalog just because that's the quickest, easiest way to pull up some examples. Make that a little bit bigger so that you all can see it there. And I'm just going to pick a state. So we're going to type in California. And you're going to see very quickly here, we have several databases of birth, marriage, and death records, some divorce records, where these are clearly labeled as an index. So if I was to come in here, and however I get into this particular database, whether it's through a global search or through the card catalog, the database is clearly labeled as an index, okay? So that's one way to tell. Now, sometimes it's not clearly labeled. So if I go to Tennessee, for example, here in Tennessee, what you'll see, here we have some delayed birth records. We have a death and burials index. We have some death records. We have Tennessee state marriages. And sometimes it's hard to tell from the title alone whether this is going to be actual records or whether it's going to be an index. And so the easiest way to tell what you're looking at in that situation is to look and see if there is an image here where it has a view button and something to click on. If it is only an index, there will be a little thing here that says index only, okay? And we've put that on there. That's a new development. We've put that now on all records so it says index only, so that you know, because some people weren't quite sure. So if there's an image to view, you're looking at possibly an original record, and if there's not an image to view, then you could be looking at an index only. So look at the database title. Is there an image available to view? And then if there is an image available to view, that doesn't always mean that what you're looking at is an original record. Sometimes, and I'll show you an example here, the image is just an alphabetical list. It's an index that was created usually by the organization and then given to us in paper or microfilm format, and we indexed the index, okay? So here is an example of that. If we come over here and we pull up those England birth, marriage, and death records, one of the things that we're going to see here, go to birth, marriage, and death, and then we're going to go to, let's pull up this marriage index as an example. Okay, so here, if I pull up, even though it says index, right, I pull this up, there is an actual image to view. But when you view that image, what you're going to notice is that it's an alphabetical list, and it doesn't have very much information. In this case, if I scroll up to the top, it might give me column headers. There we go. Okay, it's the name of the person that was married and the district they were married in, and then the volume and page number where I'm going to find that marriage registered. So there is an image attached in this case, but it is still just an index. This is the index that was provided to Ancestry by the General Register's Office, and then we created a digital index out of this information so that that information was searchable for you, okay? So you look at the database title, see if there's an image to view or not. If there is an image, check and make sure that image is not just an alphabetical list. Look to see if it is an actual record in and of itself. Now, when we're talking about birth, marriage, and death records in particular, it's good to know that birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, like we typically think of them in our head, like we have now, have not always been the case. A lot of times it was just a register, meaning, the clerk or the parish priest or whoever may have just written an entry in a book. And so it may look like an index, okay, because it's just a bunch of entries. But pay attention to whether it's alphabetical or chronological. If it's chronological, chances are you are looking at an original record or a copy, a hand copy of the original record. And that may be as close to the original as you're going to be able to get. So let's talk about getting close to that original record. A lot of times people will find a record and they'll say, well, I found this record. Why do I need the original? Okay, well, here are a few reasons why, and I'll show you some examples. Index entries can often be inaccurate and are very often incomplete. And here's what I mean by that. Let's go back to that example in England, okay? Look at this particular record. Now, think about what had to happen in order to create this particular index entry for you to access it. What it means is that somebody in the General Register's office in England or one of their partnering organizations had to go through the records one at a time and create this alphabetical list. That means somebody was copying information out of the register into a database or maybe even onto typewritten sheets, who knows, depending on the time when the index was created. Every time a record is copied, it introduces opportunity for errors, right? Which just means somebody could transpose letters or type something wrong or read it wrong. And so what you're looking at is somebody's interpretation of the original record, and it could be wrong, okay? Now, Ancestry gets this, and in order for us to create a digital index that allows you to search this record, we also then have to have somebody go through and type this information into a database. And so again, another copy introduces another opportunity for error. No matter how careful you are, and if any of you have done indexing, you know how challenging it can be. Errors happen. Even with typewritten stuff like this, you end up with smears or letters that are smushed together or a bad key or a faded something, and you can't quite tell what that particular letter is. So anything can happen anytime you copy a record that makes it less accurate than the original record, okay? The second reason why index entries are not sufficient is because they are very often incomplete. Let's go back to this England marriage register. Look at what is missing here, okay? In this case, we have Alan E. Aaron, and he married somebody, it looks like, whose maiden name was Nicholson, and they were married in the Towbridge district, and their marriage record can be found on volume 5F, page 1247. Well, what's missing here? For one thing, the bride's given name is missing, okay, so we're missing that. I also happen to know, because I've seen enough English marriage registers to know, that the age of the bride and groom is not listed here. The fathers of both the bride and the groom and their occupation and their residences, also missing. Also missing is the date of the marriage. In this case, the way that the indexes are created is they're done by quarter. So these are the marriages that were registered in the second quarter of 1965. So in this case, April, May, and June of 1965. And so there is no marriage date listed here in this particular index entry. So the index entry, the purpose of an index is to get you to the original record. It is not intended to replace the original record. And in the case of these, the English records in particular, there is so little information, sometimes you're not even sure if it's the same person. A lot of people have the same name, even when you think a name is unique. And so the only way you can know if you've got the right person or not is by ordering that original record. Now, there are some index entries that have a little bit more information, but even then, they are missing some information. So if we look at the California Birth Index, for example, and we come in here and we type in a surname and we pull up a record, okay, you'll see here we've got a name, a birth date, and a mother's maiden name, and a birth county. Well, that's fantastic. You might think that's enough information. But again, there might be more information that you're missing, such as the mother's first name, the father's name. Both of the parents' ages were often listed on a California birth record, the age at the time the child was born. Sometimes the father's occupation is listed. And again, if you have a super unique name, you might be able to get away with it. But if you have a name that is even remotely possible that there is somebody else with that same name, getting that original record is going to make sure that you're climbing your family tree, not somebody else's family tree. If I just relied on this information, not only could it be inaccurate, right, because there is not, because somebody has copied it, and I'm not looking at the original myself, but the information is incomplete. So inaccurate and incomplete is one of the challenges we struggle with as genealogists when we're dealing with just index entries. And those original records may have the very clue you need to determine if this record really is for your person or not. And almost always they're going to contain additional information about the person in question. When we think about death records, for example, very often death records will list the name of the parents of the person in question. And so that, again, there's more information available where the index entry doesn't always contain that information. So the question then is, comes up, how do you get a copy of that original record? There are several ways to determine who holds the original. The first thing you're going to want to do in almost every case is read the database description. What that's going to tell you is where Ancestry obtained this particular index. And if you know where Ancestry obtained the index, then you can go back to that organization to find out either where they obtained the index or where those original records are held. So the easiest way to find the database description, if you're looking at a particular record, is going to be just to scroll down. Here we have source information. So in this case, this particular index was made available to Ancestry from the State of California Department of Health Services. And then there's what we call this database description. And you can click the little Learn More button, scroll down, and that will give you very often information about ordering this particular record. In this case, it says, for information on how to order a copy of this birth certificate, visit the California Department of Health Services Center for Health Statistics website. You click on that link, and it will take you, when the link works, it will take you out to that particular entity or organization. Sometimes those links do go bad. That's probably a good example. And so sometimes you just have to do a Google search for that particular organization. Make sure they haven't changed their name or redirected their website, which sometimes they do without letting us know. And then you can come out there and look for how you find, how you get a copy of a birth certificate. The other thing you can do, and here's, especially when you're talking about birth, marriage, and death certificates in the United States, is to just be aware that, most counties in the United States are the ones who generate birth, marriage, and death records, and then they turn a copy of that record over to the state. So if you can put in the request with the state if you would like. Sometimes that's going to take a little bit longer because they're fielding requests for the entire state. Sometimes it is faster to go directly to the county, contact the county offices. Again, just do a Google search for, Utah County birth certificates or, Montgomery County birth certificates, whatever that might be. And it'll take you to a county record office or a county vital records or health department, and you can then sometimes order it a little faster and sometimes even a little cheaper directly from the county record office. Now, with that said, let me also point out another entity that gets involved here sometimes. Sometimes on the records on Ancestry, remember it's an index. Okay, there is no image over here, so we know it's an index even if the title didn't tell us. But here we have this link to order an original document from VitalCheck. VitalCheck is an organization that several states in the United States have contracted with to handle these requests. So the state, one of the things you have to remember is that birth, marriage, death records, census records, military records, all the records we use in genealogy were not created for the purposes of genealogists as much as we would like that to be so. They were created for other purposes. And so the organizations that manage these records very often have a primary function, and their primary function is not to field requests from genealogists. And so a lot of times they don't have the staff or the capacity or the resources to be able to do that. And so several states have contracted with VitalCheck to handle those requests for them. And so where that exists or where that is the case, very often you're going to see a link to just order the original document from VitalCheck right there on Ancestry. And we'll walk you through that process. We'll fill in the information from the index entry where we know it. Remember, you do not have to fill in every single field. That's one of the things sometimes people get frustrated and they said, well, I'm looking for the parents' names. That's why I'm trying to order the birth certificate. So how can I fill them in? Well, you don't have to, right? You do not have to fill in every single field in that particular thing. And if it tries to force you to, then that's a situation where you're going to want to go directly to the VitalCheck website or directly to the state Vital Records website and try to order directly through them. Gets a little tricky, but every state handles it differently, and that's one of the challenges we deal with here in the U.S. doing U.S. research. I'm envious in that case of England because they have a central registrar for the entire country, and that registrar manages all those requests, and they're excellent at fulfilling those requests fairly quickly. So it's just one of the challenges we have. Another type of record where an index is not sufficient, and you're probably going to want to order the original, is the Social Security Death Index here in the United States. Now, this is a national database, does cover the whole country. Again, it is just an index, and so you're going to want to order the original. And here's why. The original that you're ordering is actually not a death record. It's actually the application form that this person filled out themselves when they ordered or when they signed up for Social Security. And so not only will it list their name and their birth date, but it will also very often list their parents' names and where they were living at the time they signed up for Social Security, maybe who they were working for. So lots of really great information there. In that case, you're going to see a little link here to request a copy of an original application. And that's going to take you straight out to the Social Security Administration's website where you can sign up or fill out the paperwork in order to order a copy of that Social Security application. So really great. And again, they're great at fulfilling those requests, but it is a little spendy, but it provides you with a gold mine of information. So every organization handles ordering a little bit differently. So sometimes it's useful to read that database description, and it'll give you the details that you need in order to know how to get your hands on an original copy of that record. Now, the other place you can go is to the Ancestry Wiki. Ancestry Wiki is found in the Learning Center. Currently, we have a tab here for the Learning Center. There's also going to be some information in Help as we make some changes to the site in the coming weeks. You're going to see the Learning Center and Help be merged a little bit more closely together. But the Family History Wiki will be part of that regardless of where it lives. And in the Family History Wiki, we have the Red Book. The Red Book is an American resource where it provides you with access to information about states, counties, and towns, and where the records for each of those organizations are held. So I can drill down to, Alabama, and I can look up vital records for Alabama, and it will give me information about exactly which records are held, how much it's going to cost me, where I write, or which website I click through to in order to get access to those records. So check the Ancestry Wiki if the database description does not provide you with additional information, and then you can order that record directly from that organization or through VitalCheck. Now, there is one other category of index-only records on Ancestry now that I just want to point out. Ancestry has been placing a lot of records online lately. As a matter of fact, the the agreement between Family Search and Ancestry is for 1 billion records, index records, and then 1 billion additional records that we will be digitizing out of their Granite Mountain Vault and putting online exclusively. And so we've been putting these records online fairly quickly, and there are a lot of them that have come online over the last year. And so one of the challenges that we have is that these are just indexes, again, that have been provided by Family Search. And some of these databases go back a really, really long way. So let me just pull up one. Helps if I can spell it correctly. Let me pull up one. I was right the first time. Puerto Rico. There we go. And give you an example. These are Puerto Rico civil registration. Civil registration, of course, is the word for government registered birth, marriages, and deaths as opposed to church registered. These are from 1885 to 2001. And if I scroll down here, you're going to see that these were in partnership with Family Search. And I think this particular set of records has images available. So yes, okay. So here, this particular set of records has images available. And when I click on that, it's actually going to load those images fairly quickly. And these are the original records, okay? But not all of the records that Ancestry has put online in conjunction with Family Search fall into that category. Let's see if I can pull up my other example here. So you'll notice here for these records, there is no browse box over here, okay? There is no associated image. If I scroll down, you're going to notice that the database description is almost non-existent. It just tells you that these records came from Family Search, and then if you want to learn more about them, you need to go to Family Search. And that's because this particular set of records, they just provided us with an index, that's all. They didn't provide us with the actual images like they did in the case of Puerto Rico. And so I can come in here and I can pull up a particular record, and you'll notice here's that link, index only record. However, what you're going to see is what we call an FHL film number. The Family Search owns and operates the Family History Library, the FHL, in Salt Lake City. It's the largest family history library in the world. And they have all of these records, the original records, on microfilm. And so where an image does not exist, where it says index only, and there is an FHL film number, you do have the opportunity to order a copy of that film to be delivered to a local family history center in your area. If you want to learn more about how to do that, I would encourage you to just click on the link to go to Family Search here and learn more about how to do that. But if you just Google Family Search Family History Centers, you should be able to find one. There's thousands of them all over the country, well, or several hundred anyway, all over the country, and you can order the film. It will be delivered to that Family History Center, and then you can go into that Family History Center to view a copy of the original record on microfilm, much like you would view a copy of that original record like we did with the Puerto Rico record, right? You pull up that Puerto Rico record, you go, click back over here, you click on this record, you pull up the actual image itself, okay? In that case, you would have to save the record, okay, to your tree. Well, in the case of the Jamaican record, you order the film, it's delivered to the local family history center, you scroll through that microfilm till you find the image, till you find that record, and very often they will have the opportunity for you to copy out, create a copy of that image, either on paper or digitally. You can save it to a flash drive and then bring it back and attach it to your tree. So that's what we consider an index-only record, and the Family Search index-only records, you do have the option to order the film to your local family history center instead of having to contact, for example, Jamaica and get a copy of the record sent from there. A little bit faster, a little bit easier. Well, that is all I have prepared for you today. My purpose today was just to make sure that you understand that some records on Ancestry are only indexes. And as we put more and more records online, it might feel like there's a whole lot of index-only records, and some of that is because of the agreement with Family Search. Some of that is because that's all that the state or Vital Records Agency will allow us to put online. And we want to give you as many resources as possible. And as a genealogist, I would rather have an index than nothing. And of course, I would rather have the original record more than anything else. And so having that index, the purpose of that index is to help me understand where that original record resides and how I can get my hands on it. So if you have any additional questions about this, I will be on chat in just a few minutes to answer those if you're watching this live. If you're watching an archived version of this on YouTube, just feel free to leave a comment and we will monitor those and respond as necessary. Until next time, this is Crista Cowan. Have fun climbing your family tree.